I'm very happy to have with us an expert. He's a very accomplished person. He is a high-performing software techie, but that doesn't stop him from being an equally passionate art lover, music, etc. So it'll be very interesting to listen to him. He's Uday Kamath. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Uday.
Thank you, Subodh. Thanks for having me. Glad to be part of this. This is kind of the first time I'm doing something completely unprepared for and not knowing exactly on what topic I will talk. I have given many talks or discussions on music, on poetry, on AI. A lot of my talks are on AI, but I wanted to go and probably talk about something which is not very common about is the concept of rhythm. The concept of rhythm in various forms of poetry, art, music, and everything we do in life has that common factor of rhythm, and that kind of binds everything together in my view, from poetry, music, even like things like painting, and the underlying thing that binds rhythm together is actually complex math and patterns. So I want to give an example here, rather than talking about it in abstract. Like if you listen to any music, whether Western music or Hindustani music or Carnatic music, uh, various forms of music, whether pop, rock, ghazals, nazms, geet, thumri, khayal, any form of music in this wide panorama, you will see that there is melody and then there is rhythm. There is something that keeps time and something that keeps what is known as beats. Now, there are various structures associated with that. In Western, there is like 3 beats, 6 beats, 8 beats. There are patterns around it. How do you apply it? But there is that rhythm aspect to it. Now, the same exists in form of poetry, whether the poetry is in the traditional English poetry or in like uh, Sanskrit poetry or Hindi poetry, Persian poetry, Arabic poetry, or Urdu poetry, which is kind of which derived many things from all of this, also has the concept of rhythm. Has the that is in Sanskrit known as chand, in Urdu and Persian it is called beher, and in English it is called meter. So the, there is that constant rhythmic pattern associated with poetry, with music, and anything you do, like our heart beats in a very well-known rhythmic cycle, and you can calculate beats per minute and all those things. Uh, there is a flow of everything, like whether the train passing or like the car running, you will find that there is rhythm associated with most things we associate with, and the most things we like has good rhythm to it. So the question is, how did like these rhythm or meter or like chand or like beher come in each of these different forms of art? And even in painting, I mean, if you look at like different artists and like different designs, there is a concept of rhythm in terms of patterns. There is geometric ones, then there are abstract ones, and each you take liking to it based upon these concepts. And to me, like the most interesting part about all this is, or the fascinating part of all this is, it actually traces back to kind of a seminal book written like uh, at least 1,000 years, 2,000 years back, called Chhandshastra by Pingala. And there he describes the concept of rhythm and the different manifestation of these rhythm in different forms, whether it is poetry, whether it is dance, and whether it is music, and how the central theme of rhythm gets manifested in each different forms. And it is a fascinating book, a treatise like that covers this topic in such a minute detail. And it kind of associates syllables, it associates grammar, and it associates kind of like every form with going back to these mathematical concepts. And how this forms actually manifest itself in, say, uh, audio, in terms of prosody, in terms of phonetics, and how does it evolve in form of dance, in terms of different steps, and the beats you have to keep. How does it evolve in music in terms of laya, in terms of rhythm, and what are the different forms? And from the central concept of this chand, or rhythmic pattern, how this gets manifested in each of the artistic forms. And to go a bit deeper, or historically, yep.
Before you do that, let me give you two examples from my own family.
Yeah.
So we went to Jamaica with my son when he was 2 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, when he heard the reggae music, he immediately knew the beat and he was dancing to it, right?
Yeah.
So the beat is like, we never taught him because we don't know reggae
Yeah.
music, right?
Yeah.
So, and the people there say, hey man, your son's got the beat.
Yeah.
That's it, okay? And then this year, in February, we went with my granddaughter, 2.5 years old, to Amer Fort in Jaipur. And there's a guy sitting there playing a music, Ektara, he just play. And
Yeah.
then she heard it and she started dancing correctly.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever, because it's natural. That's what you
Yeah.
are saying. It's just in the human nature, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, even connecting from, say, from one form to another becomes possible because of the concept of rhythm or association of mathematical patterns. It helps you like to transpose or like go from one to other in a
Yeah.
very easy, abstract, in a very concrete way. Now, the thing I was talking about more of like an interesting historic part, like the Chhandshastra, from which like most of the math or the pattern evolved, got to from ancient India, traveled all the way to Persia. And in Persia and Arabic, they started using like uh, exactly the similar patterns. Like if you look at Chhandshastra, there are more than 5,000 patterns of these rhythms just in different forms. And they started adopting it to Persian prosody or Arabic prosody, and started narrowing it down to like 40s and 50 of that sounds good to ear. And that is where the concept of like various forms of poetry like ghazal, qasida, and other things started evolving, because they associated the rhythmic pattern and a structure, and kind of like things that are associated with the poetry, but giving it a very complex structural pattern. And the whole thing got evolved around from Persia, Arabic world, and came back to India in form of like uh, Urdu and Urdu ghazals in around like 10th, 12th century. And with all of like linguistic adaptation and the beauty of like assimilation, it all got evolved into what we call today's ghazal, nazms, rubais, and all different forms. And if you trace back, there are now handful of those meters, or what we call as behers, in each poetic form, and everyone sticks to those. But if you can trace back, you can trace back it to Persian and Arabic, and how it actually evolved or has one-to-one mapping to everything that came from Chhandshastra, or the seminal book I was talking about. And normally people keep asking me, why do you need to know these kind of meter, or what does it help me when I have to uh, what does it help me in general poetry or in music? The most important thing is you can memorize these verses, as Pritchett and Dr. Faruqi has written in their book. It helps you memorize these verses easily, because meters create such strong and consistent rhythmic patterns. You can compose poetries like ghazals of your own by using something traditional in structure. When you people consider you are a great reciter or an eloquent one, if you stick to the meter and if you can recite it in that particular form, whether you're doing it in English based upon like the syllables and stressed and unstressed syllables, or you're doing in Urdu in terms of the wazn or the weight of the words, you are considered eloquent if you know how to kind of like place the weight and distribute it in your patterns. You, I mean, you can construct or reconstruct even half remembered verses if you know the structure.
Yes, yes, I understand.
And there are many such beautiful things that happen, which as a normal person, it doesn't kind of like happen in a conscious way, but it happens in an unconscious way.
No, I
So,
agree with you. This is, I mean, I don't have that much learning or knowledge, but I wish I had. It's very, the links across the fields, the similarities. Music is as old as language, and perhaps older. It's the most natural thing that there is. And the art of the music in poetry is perhaps one of, because it was low cost.
yeah,
You don't need clay or anything, you can just do it. So
yeah,
it's and of course you need to have the some kind of structure to the poetry, whether it is haiku or it is limerick
yep,
or it is in a ghazal. You have to have some kind of structure so that you can appreciate the beauty,
yeah.
how this was done in this way. So yeah, I mean, I'm an amateur at it, but I appreciate that. It's very much uh, part of our enjoyment, let us put it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of like flows from there. Like I was talking about, like the structure in ghazals, and someone told me like, have you heard this particular ghazal, aaj jaane ki zid na karo? And I told him that
It's
that
not,
is not a ghazal,
it's a nazm.
it is a nazm. And he
Yes.
said, you can go on YouTube and look for it as the greatest. in the great collection called as Great Ghazals. And I told that, yes, someone has made that mistake. And uh, so the problem is people have associate things with things that they don't know about. But as I was telling him, that ghazal has kind of a very specific rules. And as you were saying, like whether it is what becomes a limerick, there is like 4-line limericks, there is 5-line limericks. They need to have certain patterns, certain rhymes. uh, Similarly, ghazals have most strict rules. The
Yeah.
rules are entire ghazal has to be of 1 meter. And if you look at like say Aaj Jaane Ki Zid Na Karo, is not the whole poem is not in the same doesn't follow exactly the same meter structure across. Apart from that, each couplet has to stand by itself, which is called a sher. And if you see a nazm has a central theme, and you can talk about the same thing and have connections. But in ghazal, each sher or couplet has to stand by itself. There is a grammar associated with like each particular couplet, that is it needs to end in certain way, which is called radif. Like uh, taking any particular poetry which says like rona aaya, uh, in like the very well known Sudarshan Fakir's ghazal, uh, so Rona Aya, every couplet ends with that particular line. That is called a refrain. And then there is something known as rhyme, which is known as kafia. And every radif has to be uh, has needs to have kafia or a rhyme before that. And people have a kind of like played around with different concepts in terms of like keeping the same structure, talking about love, talking about politics, talking about uh, activism, like women's stature, talking about like uh, different forms of love, the love for kind of like uh, the normal love between the two lovers to something which is inexplicable, like love between you and the god or whoever you want to. So there are different forms of these poetries, but the one thing that keeps them together is again a structure. And that structure is deeply into the math or the pattern. And that pattern is how we speak, how the weights get distributed in each language, and what feels good to the ears and what creates that harmony is what brings everything together.
Can I just go back to Sudarshan Fakir? Not
Yeah,
many people know his name, and that's so sad. But the only thing they know about him, if they know anything at all, is a nazm, Kagas
yeah,
ki Kashti, which is not.
yeah.
That's
Again,
the only
I-
thing they know. They
yeah,
don't know that what you said, Rona Aya. That
yeah,
one is, first of all, it's hard to understand and go with. But that's sort of sad that we just don't know our own modern poets. We just
yeah.
don't know who they are, what they did, and how they survived in all this. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, I mean, like you're absolutely right. Like Jagjit Singh ji and Sudarshan Fakir became this interesting combination, and Jagjit Singh ji actually kind of modernized or got ghazals and Urdu poem back to like masses from like kind of mushaira or very elite people listening to these poetries in like few hundreds to like thousands, millions, and billions now listening to these poetry. And this is where like things go a bit blur. As you said, like people say like, oh, I love the Kagas ki Kashti. And no, it is not a ghazal. It is a beautiful nazm. But Begum Akhtar ji loved Sudarshan Fakir and kind of used two of his beautiful, many of his beautiful ghazals in her rendition. And there is a amazing story, like how you said, like some modern greats like Sudarshan Fakir used to be completely living a life in poverty, not caring about anything, in a small dungeon kind of a room. And he happens to meet Begum Akhtar in 50s and 60s, and uh, while she was doing some radio in Punjab, and uh, sh he just meets her and tells her that I'm a poet, and she says like, okay, then recite me something. And he recites his ghazal, and that gets she gets so enthralled by it. She goes to the actual Air India recitation, and on the fly gives a melody and composition to Sudarshan Fakir's just recited ghazal, and he becomes a very well known name in 60s and 70s. He comes to Bollywood, meets Madan Mohan ji, wants to write for Hindi film music. Madan Mohan ji passes away, and he doesn't get any break because his writing is more complex, and the time is not right for ghazals. And somehow, like Jagjit ji, who used to be his friend in college day, finds him, and all of this is connected back. So it's fascinating to see life of certain people's life of such modern greats going through these patterns, and again connecting back to all the same structure or music that has been going on through ages. You're muted.
Let me venture a little bit far. I didn't understand this book fully, but long ago we used to read this book, Godel, Escher, and Bach.
Yep.
We didn't understand it, obviously. We were not capable of understanding it. But the basic point we got, that there's similarity between these three different things. What do you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fascinating book. Again, it is a very, very difficult book to read. I mean, it has so many layers to it, but it comes back to the same pattern, and that is where like many of Gödel's theorem come into picture from mathematical perspective. Is if you stay in the system, it is very difficult to put things in perspective of that particular system in a very simplified way, explaining Gödel's theorem over here. You need to be out of that system to actually bring things together or to comprehend what is happening in that particular system. And that applies to like uh, everything in physics, to like abstract things like music or poetry. And many things in that book has that particular flavor around it, connecting many things that uh, uh, all of these great people did in their respective field, and again touching or connecting all of these things through the same philosophical angle.
Wonderful. Can we hear a little bit from you on AI now? Your other half?
So absolutely, AI part. These days I'm finishing my ninth book on large language models and AI. And people normally ask me, what is this chat GPT AI and everything I hear about it and how it is changing the world? And I say, like, I, it is gonna change the world even more. Now, AI has gone through this kind of revolution. It is not like AI was born 10 years back, 20 years back. It started way back when Turing kind of imagined things and created those Turing tests where you can't say whether it was human or algorithm doing things. And it has went through this various sinusoidal way. Uh, the whole thing about like discovering AI through Minsky and neural networks. Then it went through the dark period. Then statistical things came into picture, and from 2000s, slowly the concept of deep learning or large networks came into picture. And with computing getting cheaper and cheaper, and the onset of GPUs, the data growing larger, the networks growing larger, everything started coming together now. And in last 3-4 years, there is a whole seismic shift in the computation world, in AI world, and that is through large language models, or what is called as foundation models. And people have both views on this. Can it replace human beings? Can it change everything we do? Or is it hype? Does it actually do what it is supposed to do? Is it a stochastic parrot? Is it just memorizing things from billions of data it has been fed and just reciting what it has kind of memorized? So the answers for me lies somewhere in between. For me, AI has learned a lot from different kinds of corpuses, from web, from books. And now, just based on basic things, it can actually generate things that are very, very interesting. The question is, how is it going to affect the world? In lots of studies from IMF and other global organization, there will be disruption. There will be employment impact. And I think it is like 60% of advanced economies in US and Europe will be impacted. Job creation and elimination, they are approximating like somewhere around 85 million jobs will be eliminated by 2025, and some 100 million new jobs will be created in next 5 years. There will be new automations, whether it is healthcare practitioners, whether it is marketing practitioners, whether it is legal professions. All of them will be exposed through that. And like Singapore is doing, it is sending everyone back to the school and saying that 90% of people require basic AI training by 2030. So there will be a huge shift. There will be a shift in various industries we know about, like the healthcare, finance, legal, IT. And just if you saw like few days back, there is a first AI software engineer called Devin. And if you go to any of the tools like GitHub, Copilot, or you go to like any of these, even on Chat GPT, you can ask it, just prompt it to write code based upon your natural language, and it starts writing code. It can write code in like 20-25 different languages I am aware of. And you can translate code from one to another. You can auto complete it. You can generate code just based on few lines. And that to me is a huge shift. People are gonna use AI instead of like entry-level programmers, in my view, to get these basic tasks done. So there is a huge shift in that particular market. And then it is just not about like AI kind of replacing things. There will be new roles. As I said, like someone has to write or correct AI, do this prompting, have this chatbot working for your data, kind of like put these Gen AI or LLM models in production and get it working for you. So it will create new roles like prompt engineers, chatbot developers, ML ops engineers, researchers. So it is just not eliminating jobs, but it is creating also new jobs.
Okay, so big change is coming.
Big changes coming.
All
But
right.
it is just not these changes. We need to be also aware, like any other new technologies, there are challenges associated with it. There are misinformation, or what is called as in these Gen AI world, hallucination. Chat GPT sometimes just hallucinates and produces text or generates output which may be grammatically correct, seemingly coherent, but diverges from factual accuracy. And there are lots of examples around it. And it can generate toxic outputs. It can be offensive, derogatory, or inappropriate. It can use sexist, racist, homophobic, abusive languages. It can it has ethics and biases issues too. It is trained on human data, so it has all the characteristics that majority of humans carry. And there is a favorite story of mine, like there was a Microsoft chatbot that got released few years back to completely train on how people talk to it, and within 2 days it became a Nazi, sexist, racist chatbot within 48 hours. That's how people normally interact and are, and kind of bias in that particular way. Again, there are privacy issues. Just like New York Times has a lawsuit around like illegal way different articles have been used in training of these particular LLMs, to like lots of personal information has been used without uh, seeking permissions. It kind of emits these kind of information in if adversarially attacked. So there are lots of issues around all of these, apart from good things and apart from like all the positive things that it will automate and augment and assist. So one has to be careful in its use in general.
Okay. That's a very, very fascinating talk, I must say. I never heard a techie who talks music of this type, deep down. So wonderful to have you here.
Thank
And
you.
maybe we'll have you back in a year to see what you are up to with AI and music. For the
Yep.
time being, let's say bye, unless you want to add something.
No, thank you so much both for having me, and it was great. As I said, like I haven't prepared or I didn't know anything. It was just like coming up with the topics and having a stream of consciousness flow.
That's my normal life anyway.
Awesome.
When I started this channel, I had not the faintest idea what I would do with it or what it would do for me. Just start it. Who knows what it will do? And here we are. So I like to be free floating anyway. So I have no idea what is going to happen. It's just free floating. No idea.
Awesome.
So here we are. We have this. I don't know why or how, but we have it. Okay. And there's no planning, no research, no thinking, no analysis, no looking at comparables, nothing. Just one day we'll do it. Okay. So
Awesome.
here we are. Okay, so let's say bye to the viewers. I'll
Yeah.
be back with another young person or an expert soon. Till then, bye everybody.